Hello, my name is Felice Grimes, and I'm a psychology professor here at Miami Dade College at the Kendall campus. And I'm here today to answer any questions that you may have about the field of psychology and the program that we have to offer. Here at the college, our program is designed to prepare you with a very strong foundation in the background of psychology in order for you to transfer to a four-year institution. We offer an associate's degree, which is a primary degree in order to go on in the field of psychology. Psychologists, we study many different things, everything from behavioral processes to how we learn, how we think. We study all about the brain. We study how the criminal mind works. And here at the college, we offer courses in each of those areas to help to get you prepared. And let me tell you a little bit about how our program works and what you would do if you chose to come here. Our Associate in Arts program is divided into the following manners. Oh, let me see if I can't get this working here. Let's see. Oh, let me go back. Okay, in order to earn an AA, you're going to need a total of 60 credits, 36 what are called general education credits, and I'm going to go through what we recommend for you when you come in, along with 24 electives. And it is in those elective credits that you have some space to be able to match your needs and your interests to the field of psychology. And so let me take you through our 2-year program. When you would come in, we would assign you to an advisor, and then that advisor would help you to form what's called your academic plan or my academic plan. And we have a 2-year pathway in the field of psychology. During the first year, as you can see on the slide here, your very first semester, you would be taking a course that's called Introduction to Library Research, and we see this as a fundamental course because you're able to learn all about what is research, what is the American Psychological Association or the APA format for writing, and you're going to be able to use these skills in the other psychology courses that you take when you go to do research papers and when you are assigned to do empirically based research in the future courses. You're also asked to take an English course that first semester. The first semester also, it's one of our most popular courses. It's called Psychology of Personal Effectiveness, and this is an applied psychology course which allows you to use the fundamentals of what does it take to be a more effective person. And again, it helps you to see what skills you can use to be a more effective student, what skills you need to have to be a more effective son, daughter, partner. So it's a great course where you build fundamental non-cognitive skills to help you have better relationships in your life. During that year, in the second year, you would also take the second part of the English, which is called English Composition 2. You're also going to take some math courses, starting with algebra, and then in the second semester you would take statistics. And wherever you're going as a psychology major, you would need to fundamentally have a statistics course. And this is because part of what psychologists do is they look at research studies, and most research studies have a series of different types of statistics, and so we'd like you for you to get a very good background or introduction to how to read those research studies. Here at the college, that second semester, you would also be taking Introduction to Psychology, and this is our fundamental course. You're going to learn all about the field, and I'll be going through that with you in just a moment, but all the different theories in the field of psychology. You look at how you do research. You're going to look at how the brain functions, why people are motivated, how we learn. So it's a very thorough and distinct course here at the college, which is required for all of our majors. Part of getting your degree here also means that you're going to need to demonstrate competency with your computing skills. And you can do that in one of two ways. You can either take a course, which you'll see there is called CGS 1060, or you can take a test. And if you meet an appropriate score, then you won't have to take that particular course. During the first year, the third term, which is typically the summer, you would be taking an oral communication course, which is speech, and that is because as psychologists, you will be doing presentations as you go through with your academic career when you go to get your bachelor's degree, and then if you choose to go on to graduate school. During that summer, we also like for you to take a critical thinking class, which is one of the elective, one of the choices that you have in the humanities area. And this course really hones in on those critical thinking skills. Can you essentially think about issues or theories from different perspectives? During the second year, as you'll see, we like for you to take general education biology as one of your science courses, and this course is a fundamental course when you go to transfer to a four-year institution. During that year, you will also take human growth and development, which is a course that you learn all about the body from birth until death, and you're going to look at how we think along that time, how we socialize along that time, how we learn, and how our body changes physically over time, and the things that are normative during different stages of life, human growth and development. In the second year, the second term, one of our most popular courses is called Abnormal Psychology. And this is where you learn all about abnormal behaviors. What is depression? What is mania? What does schizophrenia mean? And so you look at the root causes. What are some of the symptoms of each of those behaviors or those disorders? And also, what is the current treatment of each of those disorders? And for that course, it actually has a prerequisite of Introduction to Psychology. So you'll see as you look at the My Academic Plan that each of the courses is very specific so that it helps you, with each course you take, it helps you to be more successful in the next course that you take the following year. And so some of the other courses that you see there on the second term, things like Introduction to Sociology. The second science course is Energy in the Environment because it helps you to learn about our natural systems in the world. And then the last couple courses there, the second year, the second term, that's where those 24 elective credits, you really get some time to choose courses that you would be interested in that match your interests, depending on the field of psychology that you're interested in pursuing. Okay. Like I said before, our course here helps you to transfer to a four-year institution. And most institutions here in the state of Florida have 4 fundamental courses that you have to have. Hold on a second, I'm having trouble here. There we go. And so these are the 4 courses that are required at most institutions, at most four-year institutions here in the state of Florida. They are Introduction to Psychology, Biology, Statistics, and any 2000 level psychology elective. And so as we went through the pathway, Human Growth and Development was one of those courses that we talked about, which would be this 2000 level elective, or Abnormal Psychology. We also offer courses in Forensic Psychology, Positive Psychology, so you'd be able to choose any one of those to help meet your goals. There are different types of degrees that you can get in the field of psychology. Again, here at the college, you can earn an associate's degree or an AA, and then you would transfer to a four-year institution where you could earn either a bachelor's degree, a bachelor in arts, or a bachelor in science degree. And the type of degree depends on the institution or university that you're attending next, and that would decide the types of courses that you would be taking. In order to work professionally in the field of psychology, most need an advanced degree. And an advanced degree means that you would need either a master's degree, and from what you can see here on the screen, there are different types of master's degrees. There is a Master of Science, a Master's in Education, or an EDS, which is what a school psychologist needs, which is a specialized degree. It's more credits than a general master's degree, but it's less credits than a doctoral degree in psychology. So an EDS is a school psychologist's degree. And a school psychologist obviously works in a school, and they help to test children, for instance, in educational settings to see if they require special needs, if they have special learning needs, that they would be identified then. If a child is gifted, for instance, they would see the school psychologist for testing, and that's the kind of work that would be done by school psychologists. Folks with master's degrees here in the state of Florida can become licensed practitioners. And so for those of you who'd be interested in working in a clinical setting, for instance, you could have a private practice where you could see patients that have a variety of presenting problems. And you can do that here in the state of Florida, again, with a master's degree, whether it's a Master of Science or a Master's in Education. A doctoral degree is typically what is required when you become a licensed psychologist. And there are different types of doctoral degrees. There is a PhD, or a Doctor of Philosophy, and many PhDs work in individual or clinical settings. You might also work at a university. You might do research with a PhD because that is a basic component of the degree. So as you're going through graduate school, that's exactly what you would be studying and looking for. A PsyD, or a Doctorate of Psychology, is another doctoral degree, and this degree, its major focus is on the clinical aspects of becoming a psychologist. So you actually do the work. This is when you spend a lot of time honing in on your clinical skills. So if you're going to be a clinical psychologist, for instance, what you would do is most of the degree or the program would focus in on honing in on those skills. So for instance, how to do therapy or how to do clinical interviews. So that's what that degree is all about. And a Doctorate of Education is yet another type of psychology degree. And with an EDD, again, you can teach, you can become a therapist, and you can work in a private setting. Okay. So these are the types of settings that psychologists can work in, whether it's a private practice, at a school, or a university. And many schools actually have counseling programs, meaning that if students are having some things that they're struggling with, they're able to go in and receive services. Many corporations also have psychologists working with them. They're called industrial organizational psychologists. So if there is an issue between employees or conflict in a particular department, the industrial organizational psychologist would step in and address that. If you are in working for a company and the company is having difficulty with issues of lack of productivity, so if people just aren't getting their work done, an industrial organizational psychologist could go in and consult as to what would be a more effective method to get the persons working more productive. And so that's how a psychologist could be used in an organization. Sports organizations also use psychologists. So if a team, for instance, is having a losing season, if an athlete has been injured, or if an athlete is coming back or recovering from an injury, a sports psychologist would be working hand in hand at getting that person to cope well with what has happened and being able to make them more effective in the future. We have psychologists who work within the judicial system. So, and we see much interest in this area, have many questions from students about what does it take to be a forensic psychologist. And forensic psychologists typically are testify in court. They do evaluations to see if the person was of sane mind at the time that an incident occurred. And so they are typically hired as expert witnesses. And so that is typically the kind of work that you do, evaluations and testifying. You can also work in a hospital, and so whether it is in the field of behavioral medicine, so this would be if a person is suffering from a physical disorder. So let's say that I was diagnosed with, let's say, leukemia, and I was really struggling with the fact that I had this diagnosis. A psychologist in a hospital would come in and we would work on our coping. So now that I have this illness, what do I have to do to keep myself healthy? How do I protect myself from emotional symptoms like depression? So how do I work on those things while I'm trying to cope with a particular illness? Psychologists in hospitals can also do things like work with families. And so if there is a child that has a specific illness, the psychologist will go in and work with the family on coping with the illness, but also on following through with medical recommendations. Many times in a hospital, kids have to take lots of medicines or follow a particular treatment, and they might struggle with that. And that's the kind of work that you might do if you work in a hospital. It's all very exciting and rewarding work. Okay, so these are some of the different specialties in the field of psychology. Clinical psychologists. Clinical psychologists typically work with behaviors that are quote-unquote abnormal. So you're looking at things like depression, like mania, like personality disorders. Clinical psychologists can work, again, in hospitals. They can have a private clinic or a private office. You can work at a university doing research on those kinds of behaviors. Clinical psychologists can also study things like happiness. What does it take to be an effective person? So it's a broad range within that specific field. Counseling psychologists look at adjustment issues. So for instance, if you were starting school and you were having difficulty with all the demands that it takes to be in college, for many students we see here are working, they're taking lots of classes, right? So 4 or 5, sometimes 6 classes, and they're having trouble managing their time, and it can become incredibly overwhelming. A counseling psychologist would help you to make adjustments so that you'd be better able to function and be effective while you're here. Physiological or biological or neuropsychologists study the brain and how the brain functions and how it behaves. And so they do all kinds of really interesting research studies, everything from how we learn language, for example. They take a look at the kinds of neurons that help us to do different things. Like, for instance, we found that mirror neurons are what help us to have empathy for others. So when I can tell what you're feeling, there's actually a part of the brain that is activated that's called the mirror neuron that allows me to be able to feel a part of what it is that you're going through. And it allows me to say, hey, are you having a good day, or are you having a bad day? And those are the kinds of studies that a neuropsychologist might do. Neuropsychologists can also study brain injuries. So let's say that you were in a car accident and now you're having difficulty speaking or having function in part of your hand. So let's say that you can't write anymore as a result of the brain injury. The psychologist is going to do a study to see what part of the brain, they do a lot of testing, what part of the brain specifically was impacted so that you can form a treatment plan to help that person perhaps be able to recover some of their functioning. Very interesting. We have experimental psychologists. Experimental psychologists, what they do is they do experiments at work. And it might be experiments on animals. It might be experiments on vision. It might be experiments on the senses like hearing. So they design experiments and they carry them out. So for example, an experimental psychologist, if you went to work as one, you would never actually see a patient in your office or counsel them, because the majority of their work is to conduct experiments, to do research, and then to publish that research in what are called peer-reviewed journals. So it's a completely separate type of work. And one of the things that I would hope you see as we're going through these different fields is that 3 different psychologists could be in a room and they could all call themselves psychologists, but they could each be doing a completely different job every day of their lives, just because the fields are so incredibly different. Developmental psychologists, we have several here who are faculty members. Developmental psychologists look at normative behaviors. And so what a developmental psychologist might do is, for instance, they might say, what is a 3-year-old child at 3, what are they supposed to weigh? What are they supposed to be able to learn? What is their typical vocabulary of a 3-year-old? What are the typical types of illnesses that a 3-year-old might suffer from? So that way, when you have a 3-year-old who, for instance, might be incredibly tall, or who's not learning as they should be, they can have an intervention completed at that point in time. Developmental psychologists can do things like work for toy companies to develop toys that are age appropriate for children. Developmental psychologists can also work in television, for instance. So if you've ever seen a children's television show, at the very end they always have a line that says consulting psychologist, and so they are part of the team who's making sure that the content is specifically appropriate for a particular age. And because developmental psychologists study the lifespan, meaning from birth until death, you also have developmental psychologists who specialize in what's called gerontology, which is for people who are in the age range of 55 and older, and there's different classifications for that. So what are the needs of somebody who's 65, who's 70? What is their body going through, and what kinds of health care and emotional issues might they be going through? That's the kind of work that developmental psychologists will do. Educational psychologists, they work in education, and so they help to develop the curriculum at schools. They help to test at schools. They help to do treatment within the school setting or the university setting. They help to run groups for, again, students who might be have difficulty coping with the multiple demands of attending school. They might do things like run anti-bully campaigns, or peace campaigns, as they're oftentimes called in elementary and middle schools today. Educational psychologists can also run parent groups at schools, or develop specific interventions. So if something had happened at a school, for instance, a tragic event, something like some form of violence at a school, a psychologist could go in and work with the faculty, with the teachers, and with the students who attend the school in order to help them cope with the event that has just occurred. There are social psychologists. Social psychologists study the power of groups, the influence of people. What is it in a group setting that allows some people to come out of their shell? What is it in some group settings, for instance, that lets people be introverted and not be able to relate to others? And so social psychologists can do research, they can teach, but those are the kinds of studies that you would be looking at as a social psychologist. So what is the power of a group, and how do they function? And again, I spoke about industrial organizational psychologists, who are the ones who work within organizations, and they help to deal with hierarchical issues within the organization, or trouble between employees, or productivity. Okay, so here at the college, now that you know all about what psychologists do, here at the college we have opportunities for students to actively get involved. We have psychology student associations or psychology student organizations at several of our campuses, and so within these organizations, students get to go to specific lectures in topics that you might be interested in. So for instance, we oftentimes do lectures in how to get into graduate school, what is the process of applying, how do you get your what's called the curriculum vitae, which is an academic resume. So how do you start to put that together? The psychology student organizations, ours here at the Kendall campus recently did a panel on suicide prevention awareness. So what do you do if you have a friend who is thinking about hurting themselves? What are the steps to take? And so our students actually received specialized training to be able to conduct the student-led discussion that we had. At the college, we also have what's called Psi Beta, which is the National Honor Society in Psychology. Again, it is a national organization. There are requirements, so students have to have a 3.0 GPA in order to be able to join, and you have to have taken Introduction to Psychology. If you are part of Psi Beta, you must also maintain that 3.0 GPA and pass all of your psychology courses with a B or higher. Our students are able to engage in different projects with Psi Beta chapters from other institutions, and we're also able to pair up with the national organization that's called Psi Chi at a four-year institution, and so the students are able to coordinate and do group projects together. For example, our students are now working on a project that's called Let's Get Psyched, and that was a mental health awareness day that we had here at the college, where students were able to make poster presentations, have local resources that are here in Miami for receiving counseling services, to financial counseling services, and so the students were able to really plan and put this great program together just to make people aware of the types of services that are available right here in our community. And so I would encourage students who are coming here to get really involved, because it's also a great opportunity for mentorship and for coaching. The advisors typically will get to know the students really well and be able to guide them if they're pursuing a career in psychology. Something else that we're able to offer in some of our courses is what's called service learning, where you're able to volunteer in the field. And so if you're interested, for instance, in working with children, you'd be able to do volunteer learning hours at a school. You can do service learning at a hospital if you're interested in working, let's say, in the clinical setting. You're able to work, let's say, with law enforcement if you're interested as a psychologist to work with police officers, and so you're able to get a real sense of, is this the kind of work that I'd like to be doing? And not only are you learning, but you're also helping out your community. Right now, our students have a project where they are collecting, for instance, toys for kids who are needy. And so they have been able to form a campaign and go around campus and be able to collect donations for a specific organization that they chose to help out. And so all of these different pieces really help to make you a well-rounded student when you come here. I hope that you've been able to see that with all of these, different opportunities from service learning to the organizations on campus. When you first come here to Miami-Dade College, you're assigned an advisor, but then you're also assigned in your second year a faculty coach or mentor. And so we're really able to help you blend your interests to the specific area of psychology that you may be interested in pursuing. That is all the time that we have. I hope that if you have any questions, you're able to contact us, and I hope that you have a wonderful experience here at the college. Thank you very much.